must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Hello, and a very good afternoon to you, wherever they're watching us from Africa and across the world. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in. This is Diaspora Dispatches. It is 3 p.m. East African time here in Nairobi. And of course, on the show, I get to bring you the latest from the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and we will start with the leading story in the continent, and that is the developing story from Sudan. And two Sudanese trade unions say they will take action against the military coup that took place on Monday. The workers at the State Petroleum Company, SUDAPET, are joining the civil disobedience movement, which, while a doctors' union says it will enter a general strike. Demonstrations demanding civilian rule are meanwhile continuing in the capital, Khartoum. Earlier, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke on the phone to Abdallah Hamdok, the dispossessed prime minister, following his return home. Mr. Hamdok was arrested and detained during the coup. Mr. Blinken urged the armed forces to free all the civilian leaders it rounded up. Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok is back home after what it looks like a coup by the military last Monday. Earlier, ruling General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan had announced that the Prime Minister was staying at his home for security reasons. And still staying with Sudan, the country will reopen Khartoum Airport to all inbound and outbound flights on Wednesday. The head of Civil Aviation Authority, General Ibrahim Adlan, told news agencies that airport will resume operations starting Wednesday 4 p.m. local time. The country suspended flights on Tuesday, a day after the military seized power and declared a state of emergency. Most cabinet ministers in the transitional government were also reported to have been detained, although Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, as I said there earlier, has been released. We head over to Mozambique, and locals in Mozambique's province of Cabo Delgado found decapitated bodies of 7 people on Monday, including a 3-year-old child, according to local security forces. The first 2 victims were killed in the village of Lumumwa when they were looking for water, and that is according to eyewitnesses. There, they say the others were killed in Pancoma and Nagulua. All are suspected to have been victims of the jihadists in the region, who have been losing ground to military forces since July. Cabo Delgado is rich in natural gas but has been terrorized since 2017 by armed insurgents, with some attacks claimed by the extremist group Islamic State. We go to the DRC, and the head of the Electoral Commission in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been sworn in amid controversy over his nomination. Denis Kadima takes over as president of the Independent Electoral Commission, CHENI, with the heavy task of organizing the next elections by 2023. His appointment has not been a unanimous decision, with religious groups who are supposed to nominate CHENI members by consensus disagreeing. 6 out of 8 religious groups voted Mr. Kadima, with the Catholic Church and the largest Protestant group, the ECC, opposing it on grounds that the nomination process was irregular. The argument supported by opposition MPs who did not endorse him in Parliament. The DR Parliament approved Mr. Kadima's nomination on the 16th of October, despite the lack of consensus by these religious groups. And then we go to Nigeria, where the Apex Abo Social Cultural Organization, Ohanaeze Ndigbo, on Wednesday appealed to the indigenous people of Biafra to reconsider the 7-day sit-at-home order in the southeast of Nigeria from November 5th to November 11th. It said the appeal became necessary to enable the Anambra State governorship election scheduled for November 6th. And Ohanaeze stated this in a statement issued on Wednesday, signed by their publicity secretary-chief. Alex Ogbonia. While pleading with the IPOB to rescind the lockdown plan, Ohanaeze Ndingbo requested the chairman, South Governors Forum, and the governor of Ebonyi State, Chief David Umahi, to convene an emergency meeting of Igbo stakeholders and the youth leaders for the purpose of addressing the legitimacy crisis in the southeast, especially as it relates to a Anambra state election and the political solution for the release of the leader of IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu. And then we head over to Central African Republic, and the United Nations Refugee Agency reports it has restarted a voluntary repatriation operation for thousands of refugees from the Central African Republic who are living in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Over the past 2 years, the UN Refugee Agency has helped more than 5,000 refugees return from Congo to the Central African Republic. The voluntary operation, which has been interrupted on 2 occasions, resumed on Friday. The program was first halted on March 2020 when both countries closed their borders to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The second interruption occurred last December when violence surrounding the Central African Republic presidential elections sent an estimated 92,000 refugees fleeing into the DRC. The UNHCR spokesperson Shabia Manto says a first group of 250 refugees left Mole camp to Zongo city in the northwestern DRC last Friday. And then we go to Ghana, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, the symbolic head of the Anglican Church worldwide, has said he is gravely concerned by a proposed new law in Ghana which would impose harsh penalties on the Lgbt community. The bill is being debated in Parliament with a vote expected in a few days. It's supported by the Anglican Church of Ghana, despite an agreement by all churches that they will not support discriminatory legislation. The bill seeks to increase jail terms for up to a decade and force some to undergo conversion therapy where attempts are made to change people's sexuality. Cross-dressing and public displays of same-sex affection would be punishable by fines or detention. And then we go to Rwanda, where the German firm Biontech has signed deals with Rwanda and Senegal to build Africa's first vaccine manufacturing facility based on mRNA technology. Biontech, which with Pfizer created one of the world's most widely used COVID-19 vaccines, says the plant will have an initial capacity to produce 50 million doses annually. The plant will be built in Rwanda. The partner says the vaccines could also be developed to fight other diseases such as malaria and tuberculosis. Rwanda's health minister Daniel Ngamije said the goal was to include Africa in networks of scientific innovation and production. We go to South Africa, where a court on Tuesday rejected an application by former President Jacob Zuma to have the Attorney General dismiss his corruption trial in connection with the 1999 arms deal with 5 European companies. Zuma had asked that the prosecutor, Billy Dorner, be removed from the case, saying he was neither independent nor impartial. He accused Dorner of leaking his medical records to the media. But a judge, Piet Cohen, who sits in Pietermaritzburg Magistrates Court in the southeast of the country, told a hearing attended by Zuma that he was not persuaded that Mr. Dorner is not fit to prosecute or should no longer be a prosecutor. He therefore gave Zuma a date of April 11th, 2022 for the resumption of his long trial. Zuma, who was vice president at the time, is accused of taking bribes from French company Thales and is facing 16 counts of fraud, corruption, racketeering, and the trial began in May after years of postponements and delays. Head over to Somalia, where militia Ahlu Sunnah wal Jamaa has agreed to a ceasefire following talks brokered by the local business community, ending days of bloodshed in Galmudug Federal State. Regional State President Abdi Khari Kwakwa told the media on Wednesday that the group, seen as moderate and who had been government allies, agreed to leave Gur al-Town. Following night-long talks, it was unclear what offers the group agreed to or if there would be further negotiations. The AWSJ militia were allied to government forces against Al-Shabaab but fell out over power-sharing agreements in the local federal administrations. And then we head over to Burkina Faso, and a former army private admitted at a trial on Tuesday that he had helped transport a hit squad to assassinate Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara 34 years ago. The trial unfolding at a military court in Ouagadougou is being closely followed by the Burkinabe public, many of whom hope it will shed light on one of the country's darkest chapters. 14 people are on trial for the 1987 assassination, in which Sankara and 12 others were cut down in a hail of bullets at a top government meeting. The accused include Sankara's friend and former comrade-in-arms, Blaise Compaoré, who came to power after the bloodbath. In a testimony to the court, former Private Yamba Elise El-Boudou, 62, admitted a charge of complicity in endangering state security, but he said his actions were unpremeditated. He had not taken part in any meeting to plan the assassination, nor had he taken part in the shooting. And then we head back to Nigeria, where the southwest zone of the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria has called on President Muhammadu Buhari to arrest Sheikh Ahmad Gumi over his utterances, especially for saying that the federal government should not declare the bandits as terrorists. PFN said he would be the #1 suspect, especially with his romance with the bandits. The Christian body disclosed this yesterday in Lagos after a conference attended by its chapters from the 6 southwest states. Speaking through its leader, Archbishop John Osa Oni, PFN said Gumi's utterances were questionable, and as such, the federal government should hold him responsible. And I think I've said that here a couple of times before. Thank you so much. That is where we end our bulletin this afternoon. And I don't know if that will be challenging enough for President Buhari to take action, or perhaps the government of Nigeria to have this sheikh come in for questioning. Maybe, he, as I said, he could have very vital information that could help in, getting these bandits, because if they continue raining terror the way they do to the population of Nigeria, why should they not be, proscribed as a terrorist group? Why? Because if their main intention is to cause harm to the people and the population and destroy property and just, like we've been saying, then their actions amount to terrorism. All right. I don't know if there's a better word of calling, of how you can call these groups. If the government, or rather this cleric, does not want them to be called terrorists, and then how is the government supposed to handle this situation? Okay, and all right, so the latest yesterday, as we were talking here, I was telling you about the press conference that was being held by the military leader in Sudan, that is Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. And apparently, from what I was just looking at AU's website a few moments ago, they shared a link from 2019 when they suspended Sudan from the African Union. So the same statement with the same date in April 2019 is what they're sharing now. So I don't know if African Union is implying that it has suspended Sudan from African Union, or it is planning to suspend Sudan from the African Union. It was not very clear to me, because I had heard a report somewhere that the African Union had suspended AU from the organization, and not AU, the African Union had suspended Sudan, okay, from the African Union. And so I went to check from their website, and what I saw was African Union share a link of the suspension they had, a communication they had in 2019 April, towards the suspension of Sudan after that coup that took place. So I don't know if I don't know what they're saying, that they've suspended Sudan, because Sudan should be suspended now. Although from the reports that we've received, Prime Minister Hamdok has been released. Apparently, this General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan had taken him to his house for his own security. Like, come on now. How are you going to spin this story so that it makes sense to the rest of us out here? That was an outright coup. Like what we saw happen in Mali twice in 8 months. That is exactly what took place in Sudan. But I think because of the uproar, because of the tenacity and of the people of Sudan, they're saying, no, we've come such a long way as a country. We lost lives because of the country to have some democratic gains. We've given ourselves to this. We have sacrificed. We have sat in the heat. We have done all these things. So there's no way we are going to sit here and have you hijack this process. We must see this process to the end, and the people of Sudan must achieve whatever it is that they've been calling out for. All right, so there has been an outcry, and of course, the international community has put so much pressure on Sudan itself. So I think the military felt the right thing to do was just to, pretend like they had taken Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok to the leader, their military leader, for his safety. I thought he already has government protection. He should have government protection, or what was going to happen. It's just a lot of things and statements that was issued yesterday. So just a part of it. Of course, the military junta promised that it will continue with the much-needed transition to civilian rule once the crisis is over, in what will be seen as the initial signal for reapproachment of the international community. But they have broke the committee that is supposed to be, the transitional committee that is supposed to be seeing through this transition. It's no longer there. They disbanded it. And then, of course, he was talking to journalists yesterday where he said there will be a new government of experts and technocrats as soon as possible. And he also said that they intend to safeguard all the gains, including the peace agreements and the freedoms of the people. And of course, he also imposed, he imposed a state of emergency earlier yesterday, and the internet is still cut, and telecom services, but online platforms were being, they're saying online platforms are being abused by people who wanted to cause trouble and argue they would be returned as soon as the protest ended. The state of emergency, he said, will be lifted once we establish a government of experts and technocrats, and we will make efforts and protect those reforms without any conditions. This is not a coup. We acted to protect the transition. Really? So that was meant to protect the transition, and it was not a coup. Okay, so Al-Burhan suggested that the Prime Minister and his wife had been isolated from the group, the rest of the civilian leadership, saying the Prime Minister was a guest at his place. So why would you keep the Prime Minister at your place? Cut off communication from him. And not disclose early and send jitters across the world, because people are wondering where is Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, because you could not reveal his whereabouts. And he said, well, he's been sleeping at his place, and the wife as well. He kept them safe there. Nah. Okay. And so he said the Prime Minister was my guest and will be allowed to leave once the crisis is over, and he is in good health. I think they're just trying. At this point, I think the military of Sudan is just testing the waters as much as they can. The failed coup attempts that have been happening the last few months, I now tend to believe perhaps they were behind that. I'm not saying, but from all this, right? So they've been trying and testing and trying and testing and seeing, and also watching across and seeing how these other countries that have carried out coups that now have militaries at the helms of them, and how they're running their affairs and the things they're doing, and how they've been getting away with certain things, like Mali, like Chad. Of course, Chad, the president died, but the son was brought to power without following the due way of doing things according to the constitution in Chad, the son of Idris Deby. And then in, where else? That other country in that part of Africa. So they've been seeing, and so they're trying to just test waters and see. But also, there's some information that perhaps could very well be one of the reasons why they are afraid of having Sudan being led by civilians. Apparently, there are companies in Sudan, some part of the economy, that is being run by the military, all right? Like military has enterprises in Sudan. Okay, so they're afraid that when a civilian leadership will come to power, this will mean accountability. This will mean some of these things will be open for the public to know what's really going on, and they're afraid. So I think intimidation is a tool that they will continue using to try to point at the civilians the other side, and show them that you can only come this far when it comes to the military and what you're doing and how we've been running this country. We do not want you interfering. So I think it's one, they're avoiding accountability. Two, they're just afraid on what a civilian ruling would look like, because even former President Omar al-Bashir was from the military, all right, and then he led by the military. So that's all majority of Sudanese have known, and that is how these generals have known to rule this country. So any other thing that differs from that, they are struggling so much to see how that will fit into the context of Sudan as they knew it. So this new dispensation is something that is not very much welcome. So they will continue with these theatrics. This is not the last time we'll hear about a crisis coming from Sudan. Until the transition is made possible, it's going to be a problem, okay, from all sides, points there. Anyway, that is that from Sudan. As I led to you earlier, about that news from Southwest Zone of Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria. They're asking President Buhari to arrest Sheikh Ahmad Gumi over his utterances. We talked about this yesterday and the other day. I told you what the Sheikh said, that you cannot term bandits as terrorists. That will not be very right. So I think I've also talked about that. But as well, there is an appeal that is being made by the Igbo social cultural organization Ohanaeze and Igbo. This is what they said on Wednesday. They're asking the IPOB family to reconsider the sit-at-home, the 7-day sit-at-home order in southeast of Nigeria from November 5th to November 11th. This is because there's supposed to be a number of state governorship election that is scheduled to take place on 6th. And if you guys continue sitting at home, then that might affect the outcome of this election. And I was just reading through that communication by this group. And it's amazing how they say so much, but say so little at the same time. All right, let me just read you just a part of that and what they said. Now, Anambra is home to the greatest number of small, medium, and large-scale industries in the southeast. Most recently, Anambra has added a cargo airport to its resource base. Above all, Onitsha is the largest market in West Africa. The implication of the above illustration is that Anambra State is the melting point of Igbo traders and artisans. I think at that point, that is well, understandable. Now, it stands to reason that Anambra is the big Iroko tree that provides a shade for most Igbos. Apart from the shade, it also hosts the numerous birds that perch on the branches. Very colorful. And I've talked about this way of writing and language, Nigerians use sometimes. So therefore, any harm to the Iroko tree will create untold disastrous chain reactions and catastrophe for evil. Like just use simple language and get to the point quickly. I guess it's just your way of, because I know Nigerians are known for their rich culture and how you express yourself. So it's amazing that plays even in along with you, the kind of language and the English you use sometimes very big and very elaborate. Like, get to the point already. Just short and precise, okay? But thank you so much. So they're saying you should not sit in a nutshell. Let me tell you what this group is saying. This sit at home, you should reconsider it. It might not be very good for that state. It will affect the financial activities of Anambra State, as explained there, that Anambra State is like an Ikoro tree. Could somebody explain to me what this Ikoro tree is and its significance in the cultural setting of the people from that place? While pleading with the IPOB to rescind the lockdown plan, Ohanaeze Dingbo requested the chairman South Governors Forum and Governor of Ebonyi State, Chief David Umahi, to convene an emergency meeting of Igbo stakeholders and the youth leaders for the purpose of addressing the legitimacy crisis in the southeast, especially as it relates to a Anambra state election and the political solution to the release of the leader of Ipob, Nnamdi Kanu. So that is what they said in that communication. All right. So thank you so much. I think that is all we had time for this afternoon. Of course, people continue being killed in Mozambique. And there's some political crisis looming in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we'll be seeing how this, plays out. All right, thank you so much. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. Thank you for your time. My name is Miriam Mugutu. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye for now.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.